Well, back to this thing. I want to show you guys this before I change it because I really like how it looks, even though it doesn't fit and it's not going to work the way that it's in there now. I just want to show you how well it's working. So I notched out, like I said, I cut the mounting tabs off the intercooler, and then I notched the core support thing out, whatever you want to call that. So I notched this thing out, and it actually fits wonderful in there. It holds it in. It's like really, really good. The issue is that the radiator is hitting this part. So that's what it looks like, and I just really like how well that worked. It's like perfect. Same height, follows the same curve, everything is good. But what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to notch this in around here, and I'm probably gonna have to, it's gonna come around this section of the radiator. But this piece is like a piece of extruded aluminum. So there's like a little support inside there. You can see the backing, and then this section's all hollow. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring it in, I'm gonna notch it this way, and then I'm gonna cut it right along that section here, just like I did there. So cut it out, and then just kind of grind it smooth. So hopefully that'll keep some of the support on the front. I'll have this section here, and it won't look terrible, and I won't have to cut all of it out. So this section will be notched, holding this in place, and then radiator bolts to the intercooler, and then it'll be notched out there. The only thing that sucks about that is I'm losing my mounting points for where the fan would bolt to, but I'm not too worried about that because we can always just weld in a nut or weld those threads back in somewhere. We'll figure it out, but I just want to show this thing and show how cool it looks before I cut it back up. So it might not look too much different, but just in case I ruin it, there it was. All right, so I did some work. I didn't record it because I'm a terrible person, but today I want to get everything back together. So last night I made a loop on the transmission cooler. I made a loop on the oil cooler. Took the battery out, I took the computer mount out, and I cut down the fans so it'll actually fit in there. So now I have about 1.5 inches of clearance. I basically just cut the fan all the way around. So this is what was on there, and I just cut the whole thing off. So this should work actually pretty good. I'm gonna do some more trimming around here so it fits clean on the inside. I picked up some weather stripping, so I'm gonna do some weather stripping around there so it's soft against the radiator, and then I picked up some brackets and some bolts, and I'm going to do a little L bracket, 3 brackets on the top and the bottom, bolt it right into here, and then it should fit in there pretty good. I ended up cutting that whole thing down because it was hitting the turbo. So instead of moving the turbo, I looked at what I would need to do to move the turbo. I thought about like just making a pipe coming out of here that I could just bolt in, but then I'd have to redo the downpipe, I'd have to redo the drain, and I just decided to cut the fan instead. So it's actually going to work pretty decent. So let's get started on mounting the thing. Okay, so there's what it looks like with the fan in there too. I just use these little L brackets and then put some little bolts in there, so this thing actually works pretty good. So I cut like that 1.5 inches out, put some weather stripping in between it, and it's pretty sturdy. I can pick the whole radiator assembly up with the little handle here. There's like a little handle. I can pick the whole thing up and it doesn't even move. So actually works pretty good. I was just kind of testing some of the hoses and lines and see what I'm gonna have to do for that. This line, this top line, is actually a little bit smaller, so I might be able to stretch it over. I've done that in the past before. I might be able to stretch it. If not, I'll figure something else out. Bottom one looks like it should be able to fit, but right now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna start doing the cold side. So I might clock the turbo a little bit differently. So we'll see about that. But I'm basically gonna do like a 90 degree, and then I'll have to figure out what I want to do here. I'll probably do like another elbow or some pie cuts or something, and then try to snake it up through this way. But it should work pretty good. There is a lot of room. That's why I wanted to get the fan and everything mounted in there, so I know exactly where everything needs to go. Okay, so getting ready to pull it all back out. I got this section done. I ended up flipping the turbo upside down, and just had some sections left over, so it's going to be 2.5, just a 2.5 inch elbow down, and that's pretty much all it is on that side. I did have a coupler for this section, but I'm going to end up welding on this pie cut section because it's really close to this metal edge here, so the coupler probably would have hit and rubbed on it, rubbed through. So this, I'm just going to weld it right on, and then it does come up perfectly right here, so let's do that. Okay, got this thing all welded on now. This stuff's pretty dirty, so it was a little challenging, but got it all done. Just letting it cool down right now, and we'll get it back on. It's going to be a little bit tricky to get in there, I think, because the power steering cooler line is going to go on top of this, so I'm going to have to try to snake it around as I put it in, but we'll get it in there. We'll figure it out. Okie dokie, boys. So we got the cold side pretty much all done. I ended up going to O'Reilly's, and I bought one of those Spectra performance couplers, and I extended this thing. So I've just used a piece of like aluminized 4-inch in here to extend it out so it would clear the pulley instead of going like up and over. So went that way, just did a straight section down to the pie cut section, reused a bunch of couplers that I had. While I was working through this, I actually noticed that this was loose. If you guys have been watching for a while, you know that I'm really good at forgetting to tighten certain things. So it's kind of like my theme, I guess. So this was loose, and it was loose enough in there that I could physically hear it rattling while I was moving this pipe around. So I'll have to remember to tighten that thing. So it's probably a little bit of a boost leak earlier, so it'll be interesting to see what changes. Other than that, this side, just couplers in a straight piece, so that worked out pretty slick, nice and easy. Now I'll put the radiator and everything back in and start working on the hoses. All right, guys, I want to show you the radiator and the fan setup and how well that thing actually works. But I wanted to add also that I did get a new lens for the camera. I ordered one today, so that little booger that you see, the little light blob, if that's been bothering you guys, I ordered a new lens today. So Amazon should be here tomorrow. So if that's been bugging you, we'll fix that thing. The lenses are kind of expensive for these cameras. They're like 140 bucks. So I found one for 67, and we'll see if that works. So look at this thing. This is just holding on to the fans, and it doesn't rattle or anything. So it's not loose. It just works pretty good. So I'll move the camera and then I'll put this thing in. All right, now I can see how this goes in there. A little heavy. Heavy. That part was a little bit tight. Had to make it around the intercooler pipe. Alright, so now that goes in. I'll just have to tighten this. Put this bolt in. I like this setup that it actually bolts right to the intercooler. It's pretty cool. Now I'll grab the top piece. This little cross member. I might actually weld a piece in here, or I could maybe even go over the top. We'll see, but just like a flat piece of thin aluminum, just for some structure if it decides it wants to wiggle around and suck. We'll see. There we go. So even with this clamped in, the whole thing kind of wiggles a little bit, but I don't have it bolted on the end. So there's 3 bolts that go on each end. So that should help some of it. So if it still wobbles, I'll probably reinforce this section here. But other than that, pretty decent. It doesn't hit the cold side. It doesn't hit the turbo. Everything seems to be pretty decent. Pretty cool. So now I think I probably have to extend. No, maybe not. Let's see. I don't think I have to extend my map or my intake air temp. Let's see. Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to extend it. Well, it fits, but it's kind of looks like crap. But oh well. Maybe I'll extend it someday. So yeah, I'm gonna get going on the hoses. This one does go here, and this is kind of cool that even like the little clip is gonna go right into the top of the radiator again, so it almost looks like a factory setup. You know, I mean it is a factory setup, but from a different vehicle. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think it actually looks pretty good. Pretty excited with how this thing came together. All right, so got everything in and mounted. I've been filling it with coolant. I was able to rework the top hose. So what I did with this section, and I'll show you in a little bit, was I'm just using like an exhaust reducer inside there, like a galvanized one for now. And I used a lower hose and then adapted it to the upper hose. And that fitting was like $3. So just to get that thing to work, it should actually work pretty good. But what I wanted to show you is watch this. So I was kind of worried about this top cross member and how this thing was gonna work. Thought it was gonna be flimsy. This thing doesn't move at all. Finally got it bolted down. It doesn't move at all now that it's tight. Intercooler doesn't move at all. It's not even mounted. It's just like held into place by the top cross member. So it's almost like I tried it, guys. It seems like it works really nice. I can't move anything. The fan shroud doesn't move at all. Everything is really solid. So I don't have to really worry about anything. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. Okay, so not sure what I all showed yet, but this is all on. I was able to reuse the bottom radiator hose. I just had to cut it a little bit shorter, and then I like put some transmission fluid inside of it and just kind of stretched it over the fitting, and that worked out okay. So here's what I did on the top. This is actually a lower hose, and again I had to stretch it over because this radiator is a lot bigger. Just ended up using this little aluminized reducer, and I went to O'Reilly's and I was looking at a hose that I could use to modify it, and I gave the guy the 2 hoses I need, and he went in the back. And then as I was standing there waiting, I was standing in the exhaust section, and I saw that little fitting, and I'm like, damn, that would work perfect. And it was $3. So did that, and I ended up welding for the steam port. I ended up welding one of these little guys on. It's just a standoff, and ended up welding it in there. Just drilled a hole through it, TIG welded it in, and then I ended up just welding a couple little dots on the end for a barb so it would catch. So that works out okay because this radiator doesn't have a spot for the steam port. So I was able to reuse this for this little nipple up here. That worked out good, but it didn't have anything for steam vent. So that's what I ended up doing. Overall, looks pretty good. It is a little tight on the hose on the bottom, so I'll have to keep an eye on that on the wastegate. But other than that, should be good. All I gotta do is polish up the turbo so it makes a lot of power, but then we should be okay. Like I said, I might end up extending this thing later on, but this is all gonna come out eventually because I'm gonna have to do cam and springs eventually, probably in the next, I don't know, maybe few weeks or month or something, because I don't think I'm gonna like driving it around very much like this. So next steps after this, I'm gonna put the headlights and the grill and everything back together. Next video, I'll go drive it, and then we can look at intake temps and compare and kind of see where it's at. But then next project will be the fuel system. I'm gonna be upgrading the fuel system. I think I have almost all the parts for that now. And I might go pick up a transmission tomorrow. I ended up finding a 2-wheel drive 4L80 for $250, but it's like an hour and a half from here. But that's a pretty good price. Pretty good price for around here anyways. And they said it's working, so might start brainstorming the 4L80 swap on this too and getting ready to start doing that. Other than that, guys, all I can say is I'm like super happy with this thing. Super happy with how this turned out. I was kind of worried about how flimsy this was gonna be, and it's like not flimsy at all. And it fits, everything just looks sweet. I mean, I don't know. Let me put the cover back on. Let me put the cover on quick. Okay, so there it is. Cover's on. Put the front and everything back on. I did have an issue with this headlight putting it back on because the headlight adjuster piece actually hit the intercooler. So I ended up having to cut the adjuster off. So hopefully my lights are in the right spot. Hopefully that'll be okay. Should be decent. I didn't adjust it at all. I just cut it in half, so it does have like the plastic adjuster with the threaded piece in it. I didn't have to move any of that stuff, so it should stay okay. But look at how this thing looks. I mean, looks like it's just supposed to be there. Aside from this little gouge there, you would really not even know, I guess. So I'm really happy with how it went together. Tomorrow I gotta put the battery back in, but then tomorrow I'll go drive it, and then we'll see, one, how much boost it makes now that I have the intake air temp sensor tight, and then two, what the intake temps do. So I don't think it's gonna do much, and it's cold outside, so it's gonna be blowing a bunch of air by it. So pretty happy with it. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.